Hi there, you're listening to the Guitar Speak podcast, recorded here in Sydney, Australia, and zoomed all around the world through iTunes and Stitcher. Actually, iTunes, I think they're calling themselves Apple Podcasts now, but it's the same thing. Anyway, there we are. Great to have you, and thank you for such a great reception to the interview with Joel McDonald in last week's show. Joel is absolutely fantastic guitar player, and the day of the interview, I actually went to see Joel's band, Frankie's world famous house band, playing at Frankie's Pizza in the middle of Sydney, and they were unbelievable. Oh man, they were playing, what were they playing? They were playing like Old White Snake, Van Halen, some Mr. Big, some old Rod Stewart stuff, and they just killed it. They killed it. I was blown away. And Joel was fantastic on guitar. So thank you guys. Hope to see you guys play again soon. If you're in Sydney, definitely Monday night down at Frankie's Pizza is a great thing to get to. Now, of course, Joel's got some gigs coming up with Rose Tattoo as well, so check those out too. All right, now on to today's guest, Joe Robinson, young man from the northern coast of New South Wales. Spent the last 7 or so years in Nashville, and he's ripping it up, doing some amazing things as a sideman, but even more so as a solo artist in his own right, and doing some fantastic stuff. I'm looking forward to sharing that interview with you. But before I do, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. You might be new to the show. You might have been listening for a while, but it's been great. We are just about to celebrate our first anniversary. We've got our first anniversary episode next week, and that features, spoiler alert, Scott Henderson, incredible fusion guitar player with an amazing career and lots of great stories. So I'm looking forward to sharing that interview, but also celebrating 1 year of the Guitar Speak podcast. So yeah, thank you so much for coming along for the ride. There's a lot more to come, and we're having a good time doing it. Remember, you can check out all of our episodes at iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Stitcher, you can go to guitarspeakpodcast.libsyn.com and follow us there as well. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, etc., etc. Blah, blah, blah. All right, today's interview, Joe Robinson. Man, what a player. This guy, 25 years old and already a veteran of some 2,000 odd gigs. Just let that sink in. Joe came to the collective attention of Australia probably around 2008 or so, when he won the TV show Australia's Got Talent. But there was a huge backstory. Well before that, at around the age of 10, became obsessed with the guitar, practicing hours on end, doing his own solo albums, playing lots of gigs. A total disciple of the Tommy Emmanual, Chet Atkins school of that fingerstyle, chord melody stuff, and an absolute master at it. Joe talks us through the influence of players like Phil Emmanual and his brother Tommy Emmanual as mentors on his career. Talks about the move to Nashville at the age of 18 and establishing his career there as well. Joe talks us through playing in the band Guitar Army with, Robben Ford, hanging out with Robben, trading stories and licks. Very, very cool. The other thing about Joe I love, he's not just an acoustic wizard, he's a fantastic electric player, great singer, great songwriter, and just wails on a strat most of the time, or Gretsch, or what have you. So we check out some of his electric stuff as well, which I absolutely love. Joe Robinson, welcome to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Thanks, Matt. It's good to be here.
Great,
Cheers.
great to have you, man. Hey, where were you brought up?
I grew up in I grew up kind of in Temagog, which is a little west of Kempsey, the mid north
Ah,
coast.
yeah, yeah,
A little north of Port Macquarie,
yeah, beautiful.
and yeah, just a little west of Kempsey up there was a nice little upbringing. Temagog, New South Wales. If you doodle Earth it, you'll just see green.
Beautiful. Now, I know, how far is that from the beach?
Crescent Head from Kempsey is about 15 minutes. So from kind of the house I grew up in, it was about a 45-minute drive.
Yeah,
From where I went to high school, it was 20 minutes to the beach.
cool.
So not too far from the coast.
Very nice. Very nice. Probably a bit closer than you are nowadays in Nashville.
Yeah, I'm a bit landlocked these days.
Hey, did you we brought up with a musical family? How did you get introduced to music?
Yeah, so my mom plays drums and piano and sings a bit, and my dad plays guitar and banjo. So
Awesome.
it's definitely was music, around the house when I was growing up, and I remember being like, 8 or 9 years old, and they'd all be jamming with, a group of friends, and they'd be playing "Blowing in the Wind" by Bob Dylan, and a lot of Beatles songs, and really great music. And I just remember kind of looking and going, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And my mom played in, a couple bands in and around the area, and
Uh-huh.
I was kind of just always hanging out at their rehearsals, and eventually, I started playing music and put together my own little band, and it just felt like a kind of continuation of, what my parents did. So definitely was, you know, uh, a musical upbringing.
That's great. When did you end up
Yeah.
playing for yourself?
Well, I first started playing guitar when I was 10,
Yeah.
and around that same time, I'd only been playing about 6 months or so, and it was kind of like, oh, it would be really fun if we had, a band and we could go and battle the band's competitions and write our own songs and do that kind of thing. And all I could play like "Hit the Road Jack" and a couple really simple songs, but
Great.
we had like a little school band at Willow Warren Primary in you know and it was literally like there was Lachlan who played the recorder, and we were like, oh, you can play sax. And there was Andy who played the bongos. We were like, oh, you can play drums. And then there was a girl, Caitlin, whose father was a great musician, and we're like, oh, you can play bass. I'm sure you can figure it out. So we started playing gigs, and yeah, we got pretty good and made a CD and won a few Battle of the Bands competitions, and that was kind of how I started. The first time I performed, I just was like, this is so cool. I just became obsessed with it. So
Wow. So you loved it straight away. Had you
absolutely.
had you already been playing? I think I read some of you'd been playing keyboards before that. You'd been learning like piano lessons.
Yeah, I took piano lessons like from age 6 thereabouts, and I just hated it. I absolutely hated it. Like I would get up every morning, and my mom would be like, "Oh, it's time for piano practice," and I'd sit down for 30 minutes or however long I could concentrate when I was 6 or 7,
Yeah.
and I'd practice, and it got to a point where I actually changed schools, and there was a guitar teacher at the school that I changed to, and I was like, "Mom, can I quit the piano?" And she said, "Well, if you're gonna learn the guitar, you better practice because otherwise you'll be straight back to the piano." So that was my incentive for
Okay.
practicing, and
Wow. So as you
yeah,
said though, when you did that first performance, you really caught the bug, and you became
yeah.
obsessed. So this is around 10 years old. So what were you doing in your guitar lessons then, and how did you take things to the next level when you were really getting into it?
Yeah, I first started learning kind of like folk songs, Hit the Road Jack, Horse with No Name, Leaving on a Jet Plane, and then kind of progressed to, some blues progressions. And eventually I was playing Layla and Tears in Heaven by Eric Clapton, from
Yeah,
the
great.
Acoustic Album. And those were my favorite songs to play. I learned Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
those kind of songs.
yeah. I know the album well. Such a good record.
Yeah, and my dad could play a lot of those songs, so he showed me, and my guitar teacher showed me, and and I started to learn how to solo a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of my memorable songs from our first band, the Chaotic Penguins, we were called,
That's a
was
great name.
was Evil Ways by Santana. We used to play that,
Wow, cool.
and we used to play some songs by The Offspring.
Yeah, nice mix.
We played Offspring and Santana. And, Pink Floyd, we played Money. That was maybe a little later, but
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
that's the kind of stuff I started playing,
Yeah, wow. So
and
that's really broad.
yeah, and I just kind of got to a point with my guitar teacher where he said, oh, you should probably just teach yourself. I was learning a song every week, and then I'd bring a new song back that I learned from someone else or tab or a book or whatever, and I'd show him, and he'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, cool," and we jam like that. But it was a great way to start playing, just playing songs and falling in love with the instrument, rather than learning how to read notation or anything like that. At first, I feel like it was a good foundation.
Yeah, cool. So you're playing both electric and acoustic pretty early on. You're mixing it up. Yeah, pretty early on in your development by the sounds.
Yeah, well, it was like my first guitar I had for the first year was a little 3/4 size nylon string guitar that was, like a $50 guitar that my grandmother got me when I was, really young, like 3 or something.
Uh-huh.
And I like literally played that until there was no paint on the fretboard.
That's great.
I wore it all out, and I actually got loaned an electric guitar that I used for a while. It was Emperador. It was like a Les Paul copy that was made in Japan.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, and so that was like my Santana guitar that I used to try. I learned how to play smooth and Europa and Florida Luna and all that stuff.
Fantastic.
So yeah,
Cool.
bit of both acoustic and electric.
And you started gigging, beyond your school band. You were gigging fairly early on. When did that start happening? When you started like doing, I don't know, I guess more serious shows or more guitar intensive shows?
Well, the Chaotic Penguins, we kind of got a reputation of playing like every little school fundraiser and like community things for like the rugby team, the local rugby team, and the local martial arts grading and all these kind of things.
Okay, yeah.
There was an artist, Texas Rose, who was a singer and a great voice. She's kind of like a Janis Joplin, really soulful country rock performer, and she played kind of at the local pub in Warren, where I went to school, and of course, when there was a band on, we'd all go and hang out and see, and I'd talk to the guitar player and try and learn a lick or something, and they got me on stage to play, and I was playing like, it was kind of like my Johnny B. Good moment. I was playing like some bluesy solos or something, and Texas was like, "Man, you can really play. You should come with us to Tamworth and play at the Tamworth Country Music Festival, in 3 months or whenever it was." And I was 11.
I was gonna say you must be like 10 or 11, and you're doing this. This is crazy.
Yeah, and so I was so excited to do that, and and she was really the first person that kind of gave me my big break, and there's a bass player, Chris Haig, who lives in Kempsey and is from Kempsey, and he played for a long time with the Emmanuel brothers, in Gold Rush.
Okay, yeah.
And he plays for Troy Cassadaly, and used to play for Casey Chambers and Graham Connors, and a lot of great artists, and he's a great musician. And I kind of got to know him, and he gave me the number of Phil Emmanual.
Okay.
And said, "Oh, when you're in Tamworth, give Phil a call and try and catch up with him, because he has a reputation of being, really encouraging to young guitarists." And that was how I got introduced to Phil. And when I met Phil, I was playing like Mr. Lucky by Jerry Reed and Jerry's Breakdown, and
oh wow.
I was trying to learn Cliffs of Dover by Eric Johnson.
Okay.
And, I was getting into some pretty cool stuff, and Phil was like, "Man, he's like, what? How are you this age and you're into that kind of like great music? And he was so encouraging. And he said, man, you got to come and meet, Tommy. We're playing at West Leeds Club at Tamworth in a couple nights. Come along and in the meantime, come to my shows and sit in and we'll play Europa together or something.
Wow, fantastic.
So yeah, he could not have been more encouraging. And when I heard him and Tommy play together,
Yeah, yeah.
I still remember the feeling of just being like so uncomfortable because it was like I just couldn't contain my desire to learn how to play that kind of music, and they were just so powerful, and obviously they played together for so many years, so it was just like you'd never seen two people play like that before, and totally blew my mind. And from then on I was just like, obsessed with learning to play, and those guys were really the catalyst for me getting into so many different styles of music, and starting to play as a solo, one man kind of band, kind of like Tommy does.
Yep.
I got a Maiden, a few years after that, and that's kind of just, it all grew from there, kind of thing.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I think Phil lives kind of up your way these days. I'm not sure if he was then, but he's a bit of a North Coast guy as well.
Yeah, he's got a lot of family in Coffs Harbour. His daughter Jessie's up there, and she's playing around, and does a lot of gigs and is great. And Phil lives up on the Sunshine Coast.
Oh,
so,
okay. Yeah.
But yeah, and through my early teenage years, I was playing, up the Sunshine Coast and down in Melbourne and that kind of whole East Coast. I played a lot of different places with Phil and with my own show, and with Texas Rose too. She took me all over, and it was a great musical education, I think.
Excellent. And I think we'll probably end up talking a little bit more about Tommy because he's ended up still remaining in very much in your current career, which I guess we'll get to. So you ended up recording a debut album, Birdseed. So how old were you when that came out?
I was 15.
Okay, yep. So that's, what's that, 2005, 2006, something like that?
Yeah, 2006, thereabouts.
Yeah.
So I was born in 91.
Yeah,
So.
cool. So that album, so that was mostly original work, a lot of solo fingerstyle stuff. I was knocked out when I listened to that your technique was so together and so mature. Like listening to tracks like Chicken Lickin' or Blisters. But by then, I guess you're a veteran. You've been knocking that stuff out for a good 4 or 5 years.
It's funny. I remember when the way that album came about was Paris McLeod, who was, on tour with Phil Emmanual playing keyboards. We were at the Hoey Moey in Coffs Harbour, which is a little kind of hole in the wall little pub where they have a lot of music, and it was after the gig and we're all hanging out, and I had an acoustic guitar and was playing some songs because I just always played. I just, have guitar, will travel. And Paris is like, man, can you play me something you've written? And I had one little thing, and he's like, man, you should come to my studio and make a CD. And we talked about it, and the reason I made an acoustic album was that wasn't really my main thing, but it was just easier to make a solo record than to make a band record with full production. And
yes.
We had a rhythm section on, I think, 3 songs.
Yep.
But other than that, it's mostly solo with a little percussion, and he was like, yeah, come to my studio, in a few months or whenever it was, and bring, 12 original songs, and, we'll work on them. And I literally wrote the whole thing in like a really short amount of time.
Wow.
And had a great time doing so. And, during the recording process, we'd punch in a lot, and we, it was a lot of work to get the songs together, because I didn't really I didn't really um, have a lot of experience in the studio before. So,
Sure.
the first time you go in the studio, you realize what you really sound like, and it kind of can be a little, kind of freak you out a little bit. So it was a great experience. And um, after I made that album was when I said to myself, right, I need to be better. I want to be better. And I set my alarm for 4 a.m. every day.
Oh,
That
awesome.
whole next year, like I was in high school, I was in probably year 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And I used to wake up in the morning. I had a chart on my wall, and I had like 15-minute blocks and a grid, and I had like scales,
Uh-huh.
jazz progressions, playing with the metronome, right hand flat picking, fingerstyle arrangements, and I had all these different things that I would practice for 15 minutes each every morning.
Wow.
And I would try and practice for 4 hours before school and then 4 hours after school. That was my goal. It didn't always happen, but you know, um, that's I look back on that time and just realized that that's like the foundation of everything I do to
Yeah,
this
yeah.
day. Was kind of that those days of woodshedding is where it all started for me. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's brilliant. I mean, to
cool.
be so disciplined and focused at such a young age is a gift, but to do it, to do the hard work, that's the amazing thing. And that's obviously held you in fantastically good stead. That's great, Joe. Well, did you come up with the regime yourself? Was anyone giving you pointers? Okay, you need to work on these things, or was this just stuff that by this stage of your career you realised were the parts of your playing you wanted to polish up?
Yeah, it was just myself. Like people would. I guess people have asked me, did you have parents who would kind of really push you to do it or anything? And and like my parents were so supportive, but like I dragged them all over the place.
Yeah.
So like to gigs and rehearsals, and it was like, oh, another gig, Joe. Um, and I was like, yeah, come on, and that they were supportive.
Yeah,
I
cool.
bought my first Fender Stratocaster a little just before I recorded that album. And my parents went halves with me in it, and that they were really supportive. But I feel lucky that I discovered what I was good at and what I was passionate about, and I just decided to go all in on it. I knew I wanted to learn so much because I'd listen to Tommy play and Phil, and I was into Eric Johnson and Joe Satriani and
Uh-huh.
Django and all these people, and I'd just be like, I want to do it all. And my mindset was like, I want to be able to be dropped in any country in the world, any corner of the world, and be able to um, make it as a musician. Like I want to be just so good that nothing can stop me, because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so my little kind of training log was a way of kind of, you know, preparing me for all kinds of different things. Because, a lot of people give me great advice is to be versatile and play everything and work with a metronome. And, I studied instructional videos, DVDs and tapes, and, I'd borrow them from people and
Mm-hmm.
copy them. And
Yep.
I had this library of DVDs and VHS tapes, and I used to wake up in the morning every day and eat my breakfast watching Danny Gatton and Eric Johnson,
That's the best.
and so that's where I got a lot of the information that I was kind of working up from is these sources. So.
Uh-huh. Yeah, wow. How are you getting your schoolwork done? How did that tie in for you?
I was always pretty good at school.
Yeah.
Uh, I was really good at math, and I loved math. I left school when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
Just before Australia's Got Talent, I was in grade 10.
Yep.
I ended
Yep.
grade 10. I got a few weeks into grade 11, and I'd missed out on like 6 weeks of one semester
Okay. Okay.
because I was on the road with Phil and a variety of people. And in Kempsey, it's basically there wasn't a whole lot going on there, and I was playing in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane and all these exciting places, and I wanted to go to the conservatory of music, and
Yeah, yeah.
my principal was like, obviously this is what you do, and I got really good marks. I was within the top 3 or 4 people in pretty much all the subjects. And I knew that if I failed, flunked at anything, my parents would whip me. So I always did pretty good, but it was never like every single one of my assignments that I could do on some kind of subject. I did math assignments on music. I did English assignments on music. I did science assignments on music.
That's great.
Everything was about music for me. So that was kind of the way it went. And I think I really encourage people to find something they're good at and passionate about and just go all in, because it's one of the best things you can do for yourself, because you kind of owe it to yourself if something really feels like intuitively something that you need to learn and figure out. It's a real important thing to have the courage to kind of go for that and
Awesome.
really do it. So that's what I believe.
It's fantastic. I love that. Definitely, definitely. You mentioned Australia's Got Talent. That's, I guess, when you got introduced to, the general Australian public. That was the television talent show, which you won. For a fingerstyle guitarist to win one of those competitions is pretty rare as it is. Often it's some kind of singer, some sort of pop singer, which can be great too. But to have some amazing guitar playing on national television was pretty cool. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. There is a lot of luck involved in getting me from point A to point B. I feel like I'm really lucky that I've discovered what I'm good at and what I love.
Yeah.
And there was so much luck involved in that show, because the story is I actually went to I took a trip to Nashville just pretty much straight after I left school, and Phil Emmanual had given me Tommy Emmanual's number,
Mm-hmm.
and said an email address and for his manager, and said you should go over to Nashville and meet Tommy and see some of the players over there, because there's so much great stuff going on and you'd be really inspired. And so actually borrowed some money from my grandparents, and my mom and I took a trip to Nashville, and we were here for I think 2 weeks, and I met Tommy, and I'd met him once before in Australia and played a little bit before him, but he was so welcoming to me, and took me to his house, and went out to dinner a couple of times, and he sat me down and listened to me play, and was a little hard on me. He said, you need to work on your timing and you need to work on your melodies, and he really gave me some great kind of advice.
Mm-hmm.
And we were staying in this hotel that was there was literally crack addicts, and it was really, really sketchy on the outskirts of Nashville. And it was a 30-minute taxi ride into town. So I had 2 names to meet with in Nashville, and both of those were kind of folks in the music business that have been known to help international artists and Australians and all that. One was Jeff Walker, who unfortunately passed away about a year ago, and the other was Ralph Murphy. And I took a meeting with Jeff, and he relocated us to this hotel that was right on Music Row in Nashville.
Wow, fantastic.
Which is the Strip, which is where all the publishing houses and recording studios are. And so I'm getting to how this connects with Australia's Got Talent. But what happened was we spent a week and a half, the remainder of our time, at this hotel right on Music Row, and I went door knocking on every single building on Music Row. I literally took my guitar, and I was 15, and I had this long curly blonde hair and pimples on my face, and I just went in there and I said, I'm Joe, I play the guitar, can I play for you? And I just got to meet all these cool people. I ended up meeting the head of Universal in Nashville, and I met these famous producers, Frank Rogers, who ended up producing my next album, I met on that trip. And I met the main A&R guy at Sony, and like it was just the most unbelievable thing. Like I grew up in Temagog. Like we got hot water when I was 10 years old. Like we had a tin roof with a little potbelly stove, and it was like totally in the bush, And I just had this DVD collection, and was like so obsessed with the guitar playing. And to go to Nashville and meet all these amazing people and see these incredible, huge marble buildings, and it was just and to meet Tommy, and that whole thing was just the coolest experience. So I came back to Australia, and I had a bit of a rapport with some people at Sony in Australia.
Okay. Yeah.
I played the basement when I was about 14 or 15 around the release of Birdseed, and some people from Sony came out and were interested in signing me, and that kind of thing. And anyway, I went back to Australia with this list of all the people I'd met in Nashville, and I took it to my contact at Sony, and she was actually the lady that signed John Mayer. She was an American lady, Courtney, and she was great. I really appreciated the way that she explained things to me about what a label needed from an artist. And anyway, she said to me, there's this TV show, Australia's Got Talent, and they're looking for people, they're looking for talented people to go on there and make the show, a really dynamic, experience. And so it was kind of off the cuff thing where I said, sure, I'll go on it, and I'll do whatever it takes. I was just pretty much willing to take any opportunity. I'd just been door knocking in places in Nashville, and I got back to Australia, and I was just so amped.
Yeah.
And I literally got booked on a flight down to Melbourne for the audition, and I didn't even know it was going to be on TV.
Okay.
I had no idea what it was, and I got vetted through I didn't have to send in a tape or anything. Like they knew that I was something interesting, and they put me on, and and I walked out on stage, and they put you in this room. It's like a backstage dressing room. Yeah. And there were dancers, and there was jugglers, and there was people warming up their voice, and I'm not sitting there playing, and I'm like, okay, what this will be what it'll be. And I walked out there, and I said howdy, and I looked around at the crowd, and I was like, wow, this. It was totally a crazy moment. And what went through my head was literally, this is just like I'm playing at the pub back home. I was like, this is just like another gig.
Okay, yeah.
And I just went out there and did my thing, and the rest was a whole lot of luck because, people liked me. I think they liked that I was from the bush, and they could tell that I was a very earnest kid. I was just obviously obsessed with playing music, and they asked me what I'd do if I won the prize money, and I told them I'd buy my mum a vacuum cleaner. And these kind of things are what really, I believe, made me win the show. And I played some Tommy Emmanuel arrangements of popular songs, Beatles songs, and Classical Gas.
Yeah, great.
And they told me I couldn't play my own music. They said play something that the audience is familiar with, which was a great thing, because obviously it connected with people, and it was such an amazing thing, and I had no idea I could win. I just wanted to go out there and get some more gigs, really.
Howdy.
Hi there. Ready to play?
Yep.
Cool. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, he's special.
A standing ovation
it was just an amazing experience on many levels. And from that moment on, I got opportunities to play in Europe, to play in like Thailand and eventually Japan. And I came back to Nashville to make a record with Frank Rogers, who was a producer I met on my first trip to Nashville. And eventually I, found management here and moved to the US, got a visa. The TV show helped me kind of get a visa officially. It's kind of a credential thing. And moved to Nashville when I was 18 years old. So that's kind of the first 18 years.
Yeah, wow, man. You've packed a fair bit into those 18 and a lot since as well. Goodness me. So, man, so 18, you've moved to Nashville. How does that work with your family? Did any of your family come over with you? Were you just by yourself? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I just moved by myself. My family knew that I'd been on the road with people all my life, and I'd seen people do all kinds of drugs. I'd seen all kinds of people, in different partying environments, and my mom knew that I kind of was aware of how ugly that is, and wasn't gonna like become a wreck or like get swallowed up in some Nashville music partying scene or something. So she really trusted me, and growing up she was so protective of me, and when I was 18 she just knew that I was going to be fine over here, and I had a good network of people I know over here and she'd met a lot of them, and
cool.
I made like 2 or 3 trips before I ended up moving. I went back and forth a couple times within that year, and there was a manager who came to Australia to see me play, and my mom met her, and she ended up managing me. And it was literally kind of like I came over here to make an album and ended up, I might as well stay. I'll lease an apartment for a while. And I just kind of fell in love with the music scene here, and I've been here ever since.
Wow, very cool. You've got as soon as I spoke to you, your accent stuck out because there's still a lot of Aussie in there, but obviously there's this Atlantic or trans-Pacific, I guess, for us.
It's
thing. Yeah, wow, man.
I wasn't sure chatting with you whether it would bring out more of the Australian or not. I was in the studio actually today with a guy from Indiana, and my mom called me on FaceTime, and he's like, man, Joe, you sound so Australian when you talk to your mom, man. And when I speak to Australians, sometimes it brings out more of the Australian accent, but here it's like I've just learned how to communicate with people effectively. I speak louder than I did in Australia.
Okay, yeah,
and
wow.
that's kind of an American thing, know. And I remember watching an interview with Tal Wilkenfeld back in the day and being like, man, listen to her accent. That's so weird. I was like, I'm never gonna be like that. And
because she had the same sort of thing. She probably was similar age, I guess, when she was touring around America.
Yeah.
When she started that. Wow. Yeah.
And she was someone who kind of I looked up to in terms of someone that had moved to America and done really well.
Yeah,
she did it a few years before me, and and we've become friends and
fantastic.
Like hung out together a little bit, and she's amazing. But I apologize to my Australian folks who are listening right now for my accent. And it's one of those things where to Americans I've been told I sound so Australian, and I go home to Australia and people ask if I'm from California. But it changes. Like if I go home for a month, I get it back, and being here, it's like it's a bit hard to avoid. But
it's all good, Joe. On behalf of Australia, we're very excited for you and what you're doing. And if you're picking up a little bit of the accent, that's fine. No problem.
I appreciate it, mate. Thanks.
Hey, so you recorded, Time Jumpin', that was was that the first album you recorded when you moved over?
Yeah, that was the album I made after Birdseed, so that I came to Nashville to make that album.
Yeah.
It was before I moved here.
Okay.
And it was such a great experience. We recorded it over 5 days in a really great studio, and the person in the studio before me was Snoop Dogg, and
Nice.
he had gone to the local diner and ordered all their fried chicken. He said, "Give me all the fried chicken you have," and so I turned up in the studio, and it's full of the chicken's full of Snoop Dogg's fried chicken, and I was recording through these Neumann mics through a big, huge, I think it's an SSL console,
Yeah, wow.
and Frank, who produced that record and the next one, was really great to work with, and really focused on getting good arrangements, and we just play the songs until I get them right and punch in here and there, and it's an album that I really spent a lot of time figuring out the tunes and tunes, and it was such a great experience in my mind. So
Yeah, cool. Now that
yeah,
album again is predominantly, I guess, solo acoustic kind of stuff.
yeah. Well, that album's actually totally solo acoustic, and there's one song on there with that I duet with Tommy. So Tommy played on one song with me.
Yeah, nice, nice. I heard that. That's cool. It's cool hearing the two
Cheers.
parts. I'm not sure who's who sometimes, but it's all good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're both using the same guitar, and I've listened to him so much. He's the number one influence on my guitar playing.
Uh-huh.
When I'm an acoustic guitar, I just, he said to me, he said, "Man, Joe, you have your own thing going. I'm so proud of you," and he's really given me kudos like that, which
Yeah.
feels great. But he's so much of the way I learned to play, my vocabulary was through kind of the technique that I learned from Tommy's approach, learning Tommy's arrangements and songs.
Uh-huh.
So he was kind of, the gateway to all these different musical elements that I now, draw from. So.
So at this stage, though, are you writing like more sort of pop vocal kind of oriented material? Because your next album, the 2012 "Let Me Introduce You," certainly brings that out.
Yeah, yeah. It was it was a really interesting experience making that album. This was after I'd won the TV show,
Yeah.
and I came to Nashville, and and I really wanted to like sing and do that more, and I'd done it on the road touring a little bit, but not really, and I didn't really grow up singing a lot. So Frank Rogers, who produced that album, I went to him and was like, I want to do this, and he put me with a lot of different songwriters, and I collaborated with some really talented writers in Nashville, which is kind of what people do here when they make an album. They co-write, country music, and people come from all over the world. Adele comes here, and different people come here to write with all the talented people. And I had this idea of crafting an album that featured, like songs where I'm singing, and they kind of had like maybe a bit of a John Mayer element, and more of a singer-songwriter, little pop kind of approach, and had these really intricate guitar arrangements underneath those songs. So it's kind of, I think of it as a concept album. And I had Keith Carlock play drums and Michael Rhodes play bass, and like I had amazing musicians on it. And it's funny looking back because I was 19 or something, and it was like I just wasn't really prepared to make an album like that. In some ways I look at that TV show and think, oh, it accelerated me in an unnatural way, because if it hadn't been for that show, I wouldn't have had the budget to go in and make a full production album like that.
Sure.
But these days, my show is, I play a lot of electric guitar. I'm in this band, Guitar Army, and, and we toured last year was Robben Ford, Leroy Parnell, and myself. And, that's like a pretty rock and electric band. So I play a lot of electric guitar as well as, do my fingerstyle thing. I just did 20 dates with Tommy earlier this year. And that was so awesome. Basically my life right now is every day I'm not on the road, I'm writing songs.
Okay.
And I'm working with a lot of great songwriters, but I really am passionate about, I love being the person on stage that tells the story, and that I feel like I'm not a guitarist that plays behind someone else. I love being up there and telling my story, and I feel like it's one of those things where, intuitively you have to kind of be in touch with what feels like the right thing to focus on and spend your time in. And for me, that is just trying to write great songs. And there's a folk element, there's a pop element, there's a singer-songwriter element. There's all these words you can use to describe it, but essentially it's just trying to write honest, great songs. And I have a lot of performing chops under my belt since making that 2012 album.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really excited about the next project. It's going to be something I'm very proud of. I can already feel it. So
yeah, cool. So when you say, like, with that album, like, for me, it just sounds great. It's very sophisticated kind of pop with great guitar parts.
Thanks.
What the track that stood out on that, and I think you've rejigged it a little, is the tune "Out Alive." Which is a fantastic song, man. So when you talk about when you talk about not being ready to make that album, are you talking in terms of your songwriting, or in what way?
Like my voice and my and the songwriting too.
Okay.
It was kind of like it was a big full production album.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a big success. It didn't really catch on. And a lot of people in the interwebs, have discovered that album and love it, especially in South America. People really, I get a lot of messages from Colombia and these places, but I feel personally that creatively it wasn't my proudest moment. And although I still play Out Alive, during my show, and that's become a song that's stuck around, and the Adelaide and Skyline and Hurricane, those songs are all off that album. And
Adelaide broke my heart, man.
Oh man, well thank you.
Beautiful
I'd
song.
say it's good to know it might have connected. I really love that song, and it's been a few years before I've made an album, and it's kind of been on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing with a great artist, Rodney Crowell, at the moment,
Yeah.
and he's like a legendary songwriter, and the best songwriter I've ever been around. And
wow.
I play in a trio with him, and we all sing 3-part harmony, and it's all his songs, and it's the most amazing experience to kind of tap into that. And I have a lot of great influences right now. So
Yeah, cool. You've done a couple. Probably your most recent recordings have been the Gemini EPs, which I've been blasting in high rotation recently.
Cool, thanks.
I'm loving them. So you did a rejigged version of Out Alive.
Yeah.
So I think, am I hearing right? It seems like the guitar parts are still from the original album, but you might have redone the vocals and re-edited the arrangement somewhat.
Yeah. What happened was there was a radio promoter who wanted us to have an extended version and to kind of remix it, mainly a remix.
Yeah.
So I redid the vocal and I redid the bass, and I added a guitar solo in the end, and I on that Gemini Volume 1 EP I worked with Jakia King, who's a great producer, and he just mixed the tracks that I recorded. And the kind of idea was to just do a remix of that song. I've been up and down, my mind's getting hazy, life's been thinking me up and down and spinning me round. I go crazy. Lately I've been stepping on toes and jumping out on windows and hurting pretty much everyone that I know. It's crazy, 'cause hours pass and days go by. I'm trying to live too fast, afraid to die. But and those two EPs, as well as Toe Jam, there was 3 EPs I did, since that album, and I produced. I worked with Blue Miller on Toe Jam, who's still a great friend and collaborator. But the idea was for me to play all the instruments and kind of do my own creative thing, which is totally the opposite of Let Me Introduce You, which was working with different songwriters, working with different studio musicians in a mega one of the best studios in the world, Blackbird and the Castle, and I basically just did it all myself.
That's cool.
And it was a cool thing to get out of my system, and it was I think they're really pretty interesting and cool, and I'm glad you've been blasting them. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really there's some great tracks. Ebb and Flow I loved, and I like how that becomes like a bonus track as well. I think is that on Volume 1, I think.
Oh yeah.
That's
with the spoken word.
Yeah, the spoken word. I love it. Is that you? Is that you narrating that?
It's actually not me. It's actually my best friend. It's actually Lachlan Bray, who played keyboards and saxophone in the Chaotic Penguins back in the day.
Okay.
So we grew up together, and he lives in San Francisco, and does a lot. He works with a theater company and does a lot of spoken word. He's a spoken word artist, cool. He's brilliant. And I wanted to collaborate with him on something, and that's kind of a secret track on Gemini Volume 1.
Nice.
And I'm pretty sure it's on the digital versions too, so you can listen to that if you want. It's pretty cool. He's brilliant. Turn of phrase. He's a brilliant turn of phrase.
Your housemates in her dreams while you're recording reams of riffs. Stiff and cramped, the street light gives an unreliable lamp. When they told you what it would be like to be a rock star, they forgot to mention the time it takes to get the ascension. They don't tell you about the long nights, the lonely fights, your inconsistent rights and wrongs, or the time it takes to pen the songs, the time it takes to get the throngs of adoring fans.
And Slow Drip, I love just the lyrical picture that you paint there, the idea of paying your dues, filling the bucket, but it's a very slow drip. It seems like maybe that's a metaphor for the Woodshed as well.
Absolutely. I wrote that song by myself, and I guess like I've always been drawn to people with a strong work ethic because, you know, like I said, we got hot water when I was 10. Like I used to, wake up and I'd practice for hours, and in the afternoon I'd split wood and light a fire, and I'd do fencing with my dad, and just kind of like was always always something to do on that farm, on that property. And I think these days the hustle is real, as you might say.
Uh-huh.
And so I just love the pursuit of trying to be great, trying to create great things, sharing my music with audiences, and it is a slow drip. Building a career is a slow drip. I had some really amazing moments, like Australia's Got Talent, which was overnight kind of success. But I'd played 1,000 shows before I was 18. I'd played 2,000 shows up until this day.
Yeah, wow.
So it's like it absolutely is a slow drip, and you wouldn't want it any other way, because there's nothing more rewarding than working hard for something and feeling the kind of tantalizing tasting progress.
Wow.
It's like nothing else. So to fill that bucket, it's a slow drip.
Yeah, but well earned when you see the progress. It's good, man.
Yeah.
Very cool. You mentioned Guitar Army. Now, some of us are lucky enough to have seen Robben Ford. Some of us, when I say some, a few people might jam with Robben Ford. You're actually in a band with Robben Ford. Tell me what that's like.
Yeah, no, it was a totally awesome experience. I learned so much. It totally redefined what I think about guitar tone.
Uh-huh.
Electric guitar tone. He had his Dumble amp on the road all the time, and
Wow.
he was playing a 63 SG, and he had a 64 SG he actually gave me.
Wow.
And
Nice.
he might ask for it back, but he was so great to me, and it was really a special time, being on the road with him. Guitar Army Mark II is hitting the road this year with John Jorgensen.
Wow.
Stepping into Robben's shoes,
Right, man.
and that's going to be a whole different thing, and really cool as well. And yeah, no, it's a really fun project. The idea is, three gun guitar players, and we all write songs, and basically we each bring like 4 songs and we play it, as an ensemble, and we just kind of go back and forth over each one's material. So it was cool hearing Robben play on Out Alive, for example. That was really fun, and
Fantastic.
I got to play on some of his stuff, and he was great. Amazing musician with, hearing his stories about working with Miles Davis and Joni Mitchell and George Harrison. It was just like amazing.
Okay.
Totally amazing. Really awesome opportunity.
Let's talk about your rig. What's been with that? Let's start with perhaps acoustics. You still play Maitons, or are there other guitars that have come into the fold?
I have absolutely no desire to own any guitars but my Maitons.
Yeah. Awesome.
It might be nice to have, a J45, a vintage, or an, L00 or something, like an old Gibson and an old Martin to use in the studio a little bit. But because the Maitons have kind of a bit of a modern sound, but I get so many comments from a variety of people on how great the guitars sound, and I really am proud to play them. Not just because they're from Australia, but because I think think they're just great guitars. And you know, like a Strat or a Tele or a 335 or an SG, these are iconic instruments with a distinct voice and a distinct sound.
Yes.
And to me, like Martins have a distinct voice and a distinct sound. Gibson Acoustics have that, and Maitons have that. You know, I mean, there's a lot of other great guitar companies, but I personally just don't connect with any of them. Like I plugged that Maiden in, and I use the little AER amp. You know, it's like the Tommy Emmanual rig. You know,
Yeah, cool.
I've never longed for anything other than
great.
that. I think it's just a great classic sound, and I think years from now, Maitons will be it'll be like, oh man, do you have a 2005 Maiden? It'll be like we're dealing in vintage Fenders. I think one day they'll kind of like looked at as really sought after guitars. They are now, but even more so.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I basically have a pretty simple pedal board.
Yeah.
For acoustic, I use what do I use? A tuner into a loop pedal, and I just switched to the TC Electronics loop pedal. I used to use the Boss one.
Okay, yep.
And I did a commercial for the Boss one.
Yeah.
And it's great as well, but the TC one, I'm using at the moment.
Okay, is that the Ditto?
And the Ditto ×2.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go into a Strymon. What's the delay? The little slap delay of the Strymon.
Oh yeah. I know what you mean. Not the one with all the presets, but just the little.
The El Capitan.
Ah, that's it. Yeah, like the tape delay kind of vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah,
into
cool.
the Strymon El Capitan, then
Nice.
into the Strymon Blue Sky. And I use a Shaw DI, SHAW, Shaw, as you would say in America, and I use that signal as well as it goes into the AER, and I use the AER signal as well. And the Shaw is totally dry sound to the board, and the AER has the Strymon reverb and delay pedals, and I just use the delay for a little bit of slap echo.
Yeah.
When I play with Rodney Crowell, it kind of is nice having that. But the Strymon reverb is really great. I love that.
Yeah, cool.
And that's my acoustic rig. I use a Wasinator stomp box. Shout out to Wasinator. He's up in Byron Bay and makes these stomp boxes that I use.
Cool.
Like a percussive foot stomp.
Yep. And does that go through just your normal rig as well, or does that go somewhere else?
It just goes through like a DI to the PA.
Okay, so it's a separate.
So
line.
separate line, but that's my entire acoustic rig. I have
Nice.
I have pretty much have four Maitons.
Yeah, which models?
I have my original TE 808.
Yep.
Which I actually use in the studio all day today, and it's the guitar that I played on Birdseed, and I played around the fire many a night, and it's really just being played in a really nice way, and it records great. And I have my newer Maitons, which were made for me in the custom shop, are my main guitars that I use on stage, and they're awesome. I get so many compliments from front of house engineers and different people who just flip out because Martins and Taylors and all these different pickup systems just don't sound like as good.
Yeah,
they just
wow.
sound bad. A lot of them sound awful, I think. But but yeah, I'm really happy with the sound I get, and
great, man.
I use quite heavy strings.
Yeah,
I use a 16 high E.
Wow, is that in standard tuning?
So it's
or using
yeah,
alternate
so
or...
it's just standard tuning. So it's a set of 12s, and I use a 16 on the high E.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing for maybe 2 or 3 years, and I really just love the way that it feels and sounds, and I'm just used to it.
Wow.
And,
do you have to adjust your playing? Like, is it super loud compared to, say, the second or third strings?
Yeah, it is a little louder, but I really like that. I mean, it doesn't sound unbalanced,
Yeah,
but
right.
like I hear some people really attack the high E and make it. Like, I use a kind of a pretty soft touch,
Hmm.
and I've had all my matins refretted with bigger frets.
Yeah.
That are kind of a custom gauge by Joe Glazer. And if you're in Australia, Sydney Guitar Setups, I think they're called. They have a
Yeah, yeah.
Plek machine, Plek,
Yep.
and I've had some guitars set up there too. And the Plek machine is like such an amazing way to set up the guitar. I pretty much have all my guitars just go there, and I'm always so happy. And yeah, the high E thing it just helps the melody notes sing a little on top, and yeah, it's just real natural for me to do that now.
Cool. Very nice. With your custom shop maintenance, what models are they kind of based on? Or what body shape? Are you still sticking with like that 808 kind of shape, or are you doing something different?
Yeah, it's an 808 with a cutaway,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just that. The back and sides on my guitars are made of Tasmanian myrtle,
Nice.
which is a little different from Queensland maple.
Uh-huh.
And they made some guitars. Some people order the one that I have, like they call it the JR Personal. And
Okay.
if you can look that up online, and you can see the specs.
Cool.
But yeah, the myrtle is a cool. It's beautiful looking, and it has a kind of pretty fast attack. The maple, Queensland maple, is a little maybe a little mellower, and this is a little more aggressive. And yeah, no, it's a great sound.
Nice. Very cool, man. And what about your electric rigs?
Yeah, so my main guitars that I take on the road are a Gretsch White Falcon Junior
Mm-hmm.
and a custom shop Strat that's a kind of based off a 63. So I use the 60 Strat and the White Falcon, and I use the SG that Robben let me. I use that a bit as well.
Yeah,
And
cool.
I have a couple tallies that I use sometimes, and
Uh-huh.
some other Gretches. But for the most part, the White Falcon and the Strat they're the ones I take on the road and play the
Yeah,
most.
nice.
And the White Falcon, I have 12s with a wound G on them.
Okay.
So, nice heavy strings.
Yeah.
And on the Strat, I have 11s with a 12 high E. So just a little higher
Okay.
gauge on the E, but instead of 11s. And pedals, I mostly use, I use this J Rocket Archer, which is like a Klon,
Yeah, yeah.
like a mod Klon kind of pedal. And I just use that on all the time, and I love the way it sounds. And I use a Eventide time factor delay,
Mm-hmm.
which I really like. You can store presets in there, and I have presets for a few different songs. And then I use a TC Electronics Hall of Fame reverb. And that's pretty much the rig. I also have a wah-wah pedal and a sparkle drive for a little more gain.
Okay. Yep.
But I don't really I kind of just let my amp, be kind of big and beefy, and then I back the volume off to clean it up a little bit, and I, dig in to get a little more grunts. And I like a really dynamic guitar sound.
Okay. Yeah. So your hands are really driving the vibe.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, I couldn't imagine playing with a compressor. That's just not my personal thing.
Yeah, sure.
But the Klon I really like because the Klon copied J Rocket Archer. I really like because it doesn't seem to squash the sound so much. Like I love tube streamers too, but
Yeah.
it's feel like a tube streamer is like to play a solo on the top of something, but to play like a big fat rhythm track.
Yeah.
For some reason it doesn't sound as open as this J Rocket pedal that I like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Strat Tube Screamer recipe is awesome, but it has got a very certain boxy, mid-focus kind of honk, which is fantastic. But it's not what you want all the time, perhaps.
Yeah, and the Sparkle Drive is very much like a Tube Screamer, except it has a parallel channel of clean.
The clean,
So-
yeah, nice.
So it's kind of like the bottom end you miss from the Tube Screamer effect. You can kind of dial that in on the clean thing, and it kind of has retains the beefiness a little bit. You know, it doesn't get into that MIDI thing
Yeah, sure.
as much. And as far as amps go, I have two amps that I mostly use.
Yeah.
One is a Fender Vibro King,
Yeah, nice.
and the other is a Shaw, SHAW, the same guy who makes my little DI box I spoke about earlier.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's a 30-watt Class A EL34 head,
Yeah.
and it has an EF86 preamp tube as well as a 12AX7.
Okay.
It's just a real simple amp. You know, it's volume tone, like a master volume, and I just leave that on 10 always.
Yeah.
And I have a 212 cabinet with two WGS speakers, which are kind of like Celestion type speakers. And I use the Shaw. It has like a more beefy, bigger bottom end and is louder.
Mm-hmm.
And I use the Vibro King. It has kind of a sweeter, more spongy, shimmery thing that
nice.
kind of suits lower volumes better a little bit. So that's basically the rig. Yeah.
Nice combo. So I guess the Vibroverb's running, would that be 6L6s in the power section?
The Vibro King,
Yeah.
it's 6L6s, and it's got three 10-inch speakers.
Yep.
And I just run it on 3.
Yeah.
It's one of those amps where it breaks up pretty early.
Okay.
But there's definitely a sweet spot. And a lot of people use them, like Gary Clark Jr. and these kind of folks, use them. And it's a great. It's I think it's the only Fender amp that's hand wired.
Okay.
And it sounds. It's just got that big muscular sound, and it's a great tone. I love it.
Yeah, cool. And that sounds like it would be a great partner for the Shaw with the EL34 kind of vibe of that.
Yeah.
That's a nice.
Exactly.
Nice thing to pair up.
They're real different, and it's really nice having in the studio having the option to kind of play through each one. And for a long time I recorded with 2 amps always.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then Robben made the comment. He's like, in my experience, you always get a better sound out of 1 amp.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the album where Stevie Ray used like 20 amps.
Yeah.
He said he didn't think the tone was as good as when he was just playing through 1 amp. But of course, Robben's 1 amp is a Dumble.
That's right.
And it's the most phenomenal sounding thing.
Which I think he picked up for what, $1,300 back in the day. I think he got in at the right time.
Yeah, no, it's a spectacular sounding rig.
I love it that he still lugs it out on the road. That's cool.
Yeah, you know what? He's one of the most passionate people about music and artistry and tone, and he just I just get the sense he's not interested in compromising.
Yeah.
And that's really a huge part of his musical sound and voice is that rig. And I've heard him play through a Fender Twin, and he sounds just the same. But I respect his commitment to always trying to bring the A game and the A rig, and it's pretty cool.
That's very cool. It's funny you say that. I've seen him at the Basement a couple of times, and he obviously doesn't bring his Dumble to Australia, but he had a pair of rented Fender Twins. He had just a couple of pedals, Tube Screamer, a Boss DD3, I think, maybe a Super Chorus or something. Really just stock standard stuff. And he was playing a telly. But he was doing all the Talk to Your Daughter stuff, which was obviously his Fender Esprit guitar through a Dumble, which is a totally different rig. But he sounded exactly the same. It's incredible.
Wow. Yeah, no, he gets a great sound with that telly, and he's one of these guys where his attack and his fluid kind of thing is real distinct, and that kind of translates no matter what you're playing on those elements. And he's kind of like me, like he has a real dynamic sound, he plays a Zen drive a lot, the pedal, the overdrive, and and the Dumble has it's so responsive, and that's a lot of what I look for in a tone, and what that allows is your playing inflections to really be the voice, and he has such a great signature thing that's it's real musical and fluid and expressive and great.
Yeah, definitely.
Timeless.
Awesome, yeah. But I'm loving your electric tones again on especially those EPs.
Oh, cheers.
Sounds
Appreciate
great, man. When you're wailing on that Strat, it's glorious. It's so good.
that.
Cool, man. So what's your You've already mentioned that Guitar Army Mark II is coming out. Is anything else coming up for you in 2017?
Yeah, I'm basically I'm on the road with Rodney Crowell playing, and that's been a great experience, as I mentioned. And I'm writing every day for a new album.
Yeah, great.
And I haven't really planned out the specifics of how to do that, but
Sure.
very very excited about putting that together and crafting that body of work. And I feel like I'm in a great place, as a person to really put forward a piece of a creative works that is gonna hopefully connect with a lot of people, and I know that it's gonna be something that I'm proud of, and I kind of really am as hungry as I've ever been, as passionate as I've ever been, and I'm on the road with Guitar Army a good bit this year as well, and I'm doing some shows with Kenny Rogers, opening for Kenny, and
That's cool.
yeah, that's a blast, and doing some things with Tommy. We did a bunch of shows earlier this year, which was so much fun, and I'm really grateful for my life right now because I get to work with a variety of interesting people. No two gigs are the same. I'm playing pretty much in the United States like 99% of the time these days.
Yeah.
So not a lot of international stuff, but that feels like just the right thing to do for the moment, just to kind of build up for another international trip. But yeah, no, that's kind of basically my world, and I'm grateful to be where I am. I still live in Nashville, and I've been here for 7 years now. I'm 25 years old, and it's an exciting thing. And I always love chatting to Australians, and I saw that you had Brett Garsett on the podcast.
Yeah.
I think I saw that correctly, and
Uh-huh.
when I was looking up this podcast, I was so happy to see Brett listed, because his DVD when I was like learning to play was like,
Oh yeah.
so inspiring to me, and he's one of the most, and his column in Australian Guitar Magazine too, he used to do columns, and
Yes, yeah.
he do these like 4-note arpeggios on each string, and it was just the coolest stuff I ever heard, and I was hugely influenced by him, and yeah, he reaches out to me occasionally and will comment on a video or something. He commented the other week. I saw that. And yeah, no, a great guy and an amazing musician. So
Yeah,
I always
definitely.
loved plugging into the kind of scene back home a little bit.
Yeah, great. Well, there's definitely some amazing guitar players in Australia, and some have based themselves, obviously still here. Others like yourself have taken it overseas. So, as I mentioned before, we are really sincerely thrilled to see what you're up to. For many of us in Australia, we first saw you on our TV, this little kid just smashing out the acoustic tunes, and that you've taken your career a further step. Sincerely very exciting. So, we're very proud of what you're up to, and very excited to hear what the next phase of your career might bring.
Well, thanks, mate. Yeah, and just quietly, we have a few Australian shows in the pipeline.
Nice.
That hopefully will be announced soon. So,
Okay.
I'm looking forward to coming back and playing. It's been a while, and
Yeah, great.
I know this podcast, I'm sure, goes all over the world, but it's particularly nice to connect with you being back there. So.
Oh, that's cool. So, what's the best way for people to keep up to date with your stuff? So, your tour dates, etc.
Yeah, the best way is, Facebook, like my page. You'll see where I'm touring and get updates on that stuff. Depending on your location, it sends you updates.
Yeah.
And my website, joerobinson.com, has all that information to the touring information. It also has a comprehensive list of all my equipment and my guitars and all
nice.
that specifics. So, you know, if you're into that kind of thing, check that out. And if you sign up to my mailing list, you get a free bit of tab. So I don't know if you want tab, but if you do, you can do it that way. And also I'm on Instagram. I post a lot of videos on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter as well, but I don't tweet a whole lot. I'm on Snapchat as well, but yeah, all the interwebs.
Stuff.
I participate, and maybe one day I'll even do a podcast. I've often wanted to create a podcast. I love listening to podcasts. You know, after this, I'm probably gonna eat some food and go work out and listen to some Tim Ferriss or some cool stuff that I enjoy working out to. So
Cool, man. Very nice. Excellent. Well, man, thank you so much for your time today. Yeah, it's been fantastic to meet you and hear more of the backstory behind Joe Robinson, which has been so fascinating. And as I said, yeah, really wish you all the success for your future career.
Well, thanks so much, Matt, and I hope this was, you know, a cool podcast for people. I feel like, you know, I told my life story, and maybe that's not interesting to everyone. Maybe you wanted to hear like guitar technique stuff, but we could always get into that another time. And I will say to people, you know, if you reach out to me online, I might not reply right away. If you email info@joerobinson.com, I might not reach out right away, but I'll eventually hopefully respond. And you know, I enjoy connecting with people online and that kind of thing. And yeah, I appreciate the time, and yeah, it's nice chatting with you, Matt.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you, Joe. All right, there you go, my conversation with Joe Robinson. What a great player and young man with his head screwed on the right way and working really hard to build his career and his artistry as a musician, and that's fantastic. Really inspiring to hear that story. Joe, if you start a podcast, I will totally subscribe. Very articulate dude, and yeah, so stay tuned. Check out his website, as Joe mentioned. It's really great. That gear page Joe mentioned is awesome. He details all of his pieces in loving detail, which I know guitar players dig. So that's really cool. All right, okay, I'm just about out of here. We're gonna get Joe to take it out with the outro solo to Out Alive. This is my favorite song right now. Man, it is so good, and Joe singing and playing on it is excellent. So he'll take us out, but before then, remember, you can connect with us online, Instagram, Facebook, subscribe at Apple Podcast, aka iTunes, Stitcher, guitarspeakpodcast.libsyn.com, and we'll see you next time for our first anniversary episode. Okay, thanks everyone. My name's Matt Wakeling. We'll catch you next time on the Guitar Speak Podcast.
In this crazy life.